Welcome to our webinar series for professionals.
So, welcome to this today's webinar on DNACore. And most of you, of course, already know probably DNA health, DNA sport, and DNA diet, our tripod of excellent genetic tests that many of our practitioners have a lot of experience with. And for many years, it has been on our wish list to combine the 3-in-1 report, where there is a red thread or nothing that kind of goes against each other in the advice or in the interpretation that follows, so that there is no confusion, and that things seem to make sense. It could be something in relation to salt intake in regards to blood pressure and doing sports, or it could be something to caffeine and doing sports, or some of the inflammatory genes, etc., collagen as well. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and I'm really excited. So anyway, I'm Anne-Catherine, co-founder of Nordic Laboratories and DNA Life, and we are, of course, dedicated to support you practitioners with lab tests and supplements through functional medicine treatment strategies, and combining genetic information with functional tests such as stool tests and organic acid tests, moles, hormone tests, etc. So we are, of course, recording, and we will be sharing the recording to you all, and we will be sharing the slides as well with you in the follow-up email coming soon in the next few days. Just want to remind you of the next webinar that we have on the 5th of October with Armin Schwarzbach, who's going to talk about, all about infections, which is highly relevant. I got bitten by a tick yesterday on my stomach. So anyway, so that's what it's going to be about next with the next webinar we have. And then, of course, to all of you who feel like a little autumn break, Dubai is coming up on a 3-day conference where Helen is going to educate as well. And the topics is going to be on organic acids and genetics as well, and some of the functional tests as well that we have. And when are the dates? They are the 27th to the 29th of October, and we of course hope to see you then and there. So today is Helen, our research and developer, our dietitian, and she has a master's in genetics as well, and is working hard in this field, and she just has a lot of information throughout the years with all the experience she has in trawling through research and getting also clinical experience through the tests, and also supporting all you guys and doing all the education for the companies Nordic Laboratories and DNA Life. So Helen, I will just mute myself, and you can take over the stage. Of course, if you have questions, put them in the chat. I'll take notes of them. And then at the end of Helen's presentation, if there are some questions that we haven't had answered in her presentation, I will put them up at the end if we have time, for sure. So Helen, there you go.
Thanks, Anne-Catherine. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, morning, good evening, wherever you are. I thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to make sure that this is sharing the large. Yeah. So welcome to the webinar for DNACore, much anticipated, long awaited combination of these tests. And today I want to really introduce you to what the test looks like, what you should expect to get from it, some key changes, improvements around the test, and why it took us a while to get here, but I think the wait was definitely worth it in terms of what we were able to produce at the end of the day. So thank you for your patience on it. Just a little bit of a background on where we are in terms of the genomics world and this field of personalized medicine and healthcare using different omics technologies. The first human genome was sequenced in the early 90s, or sort of, yeah, around there. And actually only completely sequenced the full 100% genome, completely sequenced actually only last year, I understand, with the Y chromosome this year being fully sequenced. So just in terms of where we are with some of the technologies, the omics, everything good takes time. And so just some background on what we've been able, or what we're seeing in this area, is looking at DNA, and this is really my field that I love, is the genomics and how that eventually relates to that biological phenotype. But many of the tests that you can do through Nordic and DNA Life include some of these other areas, from the metabolomics, looking at protein expression, et cetera, to be able to give you a holistic overview of a client. And so with these omics technologies, the beauty of where DNA sits is really at the beginning, and being able to identify what is happening with one's genotype, to eventually, and looking at a holistic overview, taking in all the other functional tests to be able to give you your eventual phenotype, and what you're seeing in the room with your clients at the end of the day. And I think just emphasizing or motivating, if you're not used to working with DNA yet, why it's so important to consider using it in combination with some of the other tests, is that it is at that starting point, and it does dictate with many other environmental inputs what your eventual phenotype is. So this is really where I sit with this test, is looking at the genetics and how our environment interacts with our genes to lead to expression of those genes, looking at the proteins that are made. Then what our environment, what we're exposing ourselves to in our environment, would then lead to changes in our biochemistry, and what we were exposed to in our womb, leading to that biological phenotype. And then the power that we have from there, understanding what our genes are, to then change what our environment is, if it's not particular to our genes, to change how our genes are expressing. So that's really the beauty of nutritional genomics, is looking at the nutrigenetics, understanding where our weaknesses are and where our responsiveness lies, and being able to personalize that, to almost manipulate where the pathways are that are a little bit weak, to improve that. So that is the language that I speak when it comes to genetics and DNA. When I speak to my husband about this, when I speak to many clients about this, all they hear with this biochemistry is, they don't know, it just, you can see the eyes glaze over and nothing further from there. And so that's where, as a practitioner, understanding the biochemistry can be very exciting for some, not so much for others. Others like the practical. And so being able to take all of this data from these omics technologies, from what we're seeing in the genotype results, to actually put it into not just data, but actually translate it into information, is what we've been working on with this report, is taking the gene and genotype results, pulling it all together to be able to give something that is as holistic as possible, as Anne-Catherine was referring to not have any kind of discrepancies or contradictions through the report, and actually be able to provide something that is really user-friendly for the end consumer. And for you as the practitioner, to make your life easy explaining this complicated language. And so looking at when we were starting to develop this test, something that we went into again was the literature. We spoke to key practitioners who've been using the test for a while, understanding what their needs are around it. So doing some focus group and some questions around what we could use, or what we could do to further improve the report. And then looking actually at research where they used focus groups on both consumers and practitioners, to improve the outcome and the presentation of the report. And that's what we spent a lot of time looking into. So with some background into that and some insights, I'm sure with COVID going through, you'll notice this in your clinic. So this is nothing groundbreaking, but it is what has been found, is that consumers are paying much greater attention to their health. They're increasingly taking more ownership of their overall well-being and focusing more on prevention than cure, which is a really good thing in this field to know and to be able to utilize that information. With that personal health ownership, we need to ensure that the access to this information is as easy to understand as possible. And so the role of the healthcare practitioners is integral in this whole process to make sure that when they're taking responsibility, they're doing the right things for their motivated action. So healthcare professionals, when we're looking at the research around this, from consumers are actually viewed as the more reliable providers of genetic information than direct-to-consumer genetic companies. So really keeping the healthcare practitioner central in this translation is still very important. Many healthcare practitioners still, however, report a lack of knowledge, skills, and confidence to adequately interpret nutrigenetic tests, albeit a positive attitude towards nutrigenetic testing. And I know the language is complicated, and that's where trying to make it as easy as possible for both the practitioner and the patient is really important. And so that's where we at DNA Life feel very strongly about the education as well. So knowledge and current involvement are very strongly related. The more you get involved, the more you take that first step into the field of genetics, the more you're going to actually become more comfortable, and the learning as you go is really what happens. So what we identified through looking at the research, through these focus groups, through feedback over the years, is there is a knowledge and confidence gap, and a need to bridge this gap also exists. In the steps between interpretation of nutrigenetic tests, that data, and actually integrating a personalized plan into information, actionable information that a consumer can use, and that you as the practitioner can provide them to take home in terms of their diet, their lifestyle, nutraceuticals, and biochemical test recommendations. And so this is the common thread with barrier to uptake of nutrigenetic testing, although the value of it, hopefully from that first slide, you can see how important it is to be able to understand what an individual's genotype is for a personalized healthcare approach. And so when we looked at how are we going to make this information easier, these are also, it would seem like common sense, I'm sure to most of you, but it was researched and reported in these studies saying to use plain language, avoiding jargon as much as possible. Appearance and structure of the report is really important, to be able to present everything in a systematic way so that you as the practitioner and the patient understand what you're getting at what points in the report, using section headings to enhance ease of reading, things just like that. So it's like reading a book when you get this report. It's not like your typical blood work. Making the results of the test prominent in the report, and this is something that we really focused on. The result of the test should stand out and preferably be the first thing the eye is drawn to. So what are the results? What are the insights? What does that information mean for me who did the test as that individual? And then also to separate the technical methodological details of the genetic test conducted from the main message communicated to the non-specialist audiences. So when we've got this information, then we need to know, okay, so we understand how we're going to start presenting the information, but what are we going to put into this report? And this is again from feedback from our clients, and then also where is the science in terms of what's kind of the starting point for this personalized healthcare journey. Something that we get asked all the time, and I'm sure you as healthcare practitioners get asked as well, is which test do I do first when it comes to genetic testing? Well, I mean, often the answer would be DNA health, but then it's often, well, you know, this person also has some weight management issues, or they actually also want to look at exercise. And so if the answer becomes all three often. And so when we're looking at that side of things, we wanted to include everything around the genetics that are related to supporting key biochemical pathways and how we can address that through therapeutic recommendations using nutrition, nutrients, and lifestyle, and thus improving good longevity and decreasing risk for chronic diseases. We want to target nutrition and nutraceutical intake. So how do we avoid insufficiencies? We're past the era of really, I mean, for many of deficiency, but it's insufficiency for improved longevity, decreasing risk of cognitive decline. So it's all your aging diseases that we're really wanting to support here. Decreasing risk for mood disorders, autoimmune disorders, improving immunity. And that's where looking at how to avoid those insufficiencies because of genetic weaknesses, that's what we want to address. And then also looking at some food intolerances, things that might just impact your overall health outcomes. In terms of weight management, if there are barriers to weight loss, we want to report on this. Something that is so useful is for a client to know if they maybe have an increased risk for genetic or because of genetics, if there's that increased risk, or for you as a practitioner to know that the weight loss might be a little bit slower in terms of setting out your prescriptions around nutrition. Are they just genetically predisposed to snacking much more, just not feeling full as quickly? So that satiety, that hunger is really strongly genetically driven. Do they have a sweet tooth? Do they not like bitter food? So you're going to struggle with vegetables. So when you're giving those prescriptions, you know how easily those are going to be adopted by your client. And so very important insights for you to understand from the weight management perspective. And then of course, everything from exercise for weight management to actually improving motivation to stay on a program if they are seeing gains in their performance ability. So are they more power or endurance based, and do they have an increased risk for injury? All of those kinds of things need to be you need to dig a little bit more to get those insights, and that's where the genetics can help you. And of course, in terms of improving health, where's a really good place to start? Making sure you're exercising, managing your weight, targeting your nutrition and your nutraceutical intake, and supporting biochemical pathways that might be weakened due to genetics is, I would say, a really good core area, those 4 core areas to start on your healthcare journey, especially when it comes to the genetic side. So taking DNA health, DNA diet, and DNA sport, we've mixed it up and present to you DNACore. So DNACore is what we would consider the next generation in nutrigenetic reporting. It's pulling together a lot of information for simplified insights and effective recommendations to decrease barriers to adoption and improve compliance. And that's really what we want at the end of the day with the clients, is improved compliance. So the 4 core areas of health insights with targeted recommendations that we analyze genes for and then report on those insights around include biological processes, nutrition, weight management, and exercise response. So this is then, once you've ordered this test, what you would receive in the report. You get a few pages in the beginning explaining what the test is, what personalized healthcare is, but then really, when you look at it, and from those guidelines that we saw from the research, one of the important things to consider is just the layout of the report. So what we've got in this report is a table of contents to be able to show you where the information is, and it's just in a nice structured way. If you're using this on your computer, you would be able to click on a specific heading and it would take you to that page. So it's really easy to navigate through the report. The key areas, and I think what is most exciting for me, is probably pages 5 to 9. Those are the summary areas where we put a lot of work into the algorithms to provide those overall summaries, looking at gene and gene environment interactions, and then also trying to make it as simplified and concise as possible, not taking too much away from the science to provide those insights and recommendations. So something you will also see in the report is if you go through just some of the the introductory pages, looking at what is personalized healthcare. This is something that we find, or we've heard from feedback from practitioners, it's a lot of time spent on explaining to a client what is genetics, what is nutrigenetics, what does it mean to have a variant in a gene. And so having imagery around that is really important in the report. What we've also done, and what we're going to be adding more of into this report, are these little QR codes. So this is the first one, is where you can scan that QR code and it will take you to a video, which will then, that you can use within your practice, or you can just highlight for your patient for them to take home with the report. Once they've left your practice, they take in what they can, but often not all of it is remembered. And so being able to have little videos to watch afterwards with reminders of what is personalized healthcare, what is a gene, what is a variant, what does that mean for me? Those kinds of explanations are provided in the report. So we've started with the personalized healthcare one, and we will start to include recordings around all of the biological areas. What is methylation? What is detoxification? In using analogies, making it really simplified for the clients. And this is something that they will always have access to as like a little short minute or 2 minute video to watch. So if you were to scan this QR code, you would see this video that would come up. I don't know if you can hear the sound. I'm not going to show you the whole video.
Sound is not good.
No, so it's just, I didn't want the sound to come through. So it's just to show you. So there's narration behind, and then there's some pictures and something that's hopefully accessible to your clients to be able to understand what is genetics, what is DNA, and explaining what is nutritional genomics, pharmacogenomics, and the importance of utilizing this information in your patient recommendations. So this is something that there's a video on. I'm not going to do the whole video because I'm not going to waste time on it, but it is available for you in the reports to view using the QR code. So that's, I think, something that's quite nice and unique to this report, is that we're trying to make it as accessible as possible and saving you time, so you don't have to spend time always explaining what is nutrigenomics, what is personalized healthcare, what is a gene, what is methylation or detoxification. And then when we get into the crux of the report, the recommendation have the key results up in front and center for you and for the consumer. So that this is actually a personalized summary image. So using iconography makes it also just a lot easier, I think, on the eye. And this is personalized to each of your clients. So wherever it is grayed, these little icons are grayed out, it means that that is where it would be baseline support for that individual. It's that they don't have a lot of genetic variation in that area. And so because of that, it would just be sort of typical recommendations provided, or typical risk around those areas. Wherever it is colored, wherever these icons are colored, that is where this person, this is a real case, this is where this specific individual does carry quite a lot of genetic variation, and so it is colored up here to be able to see. So this is where you can immediately see where are the areas that we need to work on, what information is this actually telling me, and then we go into the insights into the further pages. So, but first and up front, you're able to see in a very user-friendly image, this is the individual, what is happening on the biochemical or biological processes side. Is this where you also want to start? So then looking at your client, are they very focused on weight management? If so, we dig more into the weight management section, and you as the practitioner can obviously keep all the biological processes and all of that information feeding through into the recommendations, but you can really quickly get an idea of what is going on in one simple user-friendly image. Then we go into the insights of each of these core areas in more detail. So these are the insights of what is the risk and what does that mean for me? And again, not explained in very jargon friendly or very jargon heavy terms, but as consumer friendly and layperson friendly as possible. So like as an example, elevated risk for raised homocysteine levels. What does that mean? So raised homocysteine levels can negatively impact heart, mental health, mood, aging, and reproduction. That's more relatable for the end consumer than just saying you have higher homocysteine levels, because many people don't know what homocysteine is. So trying to make it as relatable in terms of what does it mean for me to then be able to identify with something to motivate that change. We go through each of these pages in more detail, going into the nutrition, the nutrient requirements. This is now a slight shift from if you were using DNA diet. All of the nutrition, macro and micronutrient requirements are provided here. So in terms of macronutrients, we speak about carbohydrates, the different types of fats, how it affects weight and health. And so this is often where in DNA health and DNA diet, especially if you came up with a low fat diet a low carbohydrate diet recommendation, but you were ApoE4, E4. And then it's recommending, watch those saturated fats, but you're now a low carbohydrate diet. How does that work? And so this is where we'd be able to provide those further insights. And then on the recommendations, we marry the two recommendations together, looking at individuals who can follow a low carbohydrate diet, but focusing on all the plant-based foods and still, focusing on your different types of fats. So that is all kind of married together here. And that's the difference between this report compared to doing DNA health and DNA diets separately or together, but looking at the results separately. And so this is where you would be able to see all your macronutrient requirements. We've included another one, which is not part of DNA diet, and looking at your protein intake for weight management as well. We then go into the micronutrient requirements, and this is everywhere where there are very strong gene and environment or gene nutrient interactions that exist that we can actually report on a biochemical level with regards to these nutrients. So it's not all the nutrients that would support your biochemistry or your biological areas. That's still where you would want to go into those biological areas in more detail, but where we would be able to see from the studies that the gene nutrient interaction, if we're then testing the biochemistry, would change those biochemical levels because of the variants that you carry. So this is then reported in the nutrition side. On the next page, we go into the food responsiveness. So looking at your intolerances, your potential intolerances, lactose and gluten, how you metabolize alcohol and risk for severe liver issues with that, your caffeine sensitivity. And Catherine actually mentioned this, and I'm glad you did, because it's one of the examples I'll be actually going into a little bit more, is that caffeine, you can say, caffeine is fine if you are a fast caffeine metabolizer, but actually you're a slow COMT. And so how does that work in terms of what is your overall caffeine recommendation? So we've taken all of that into account. And if there are risk genotypes coming up, that's where we give this overall insight. And then in the body of the report, you go into the breakdown around it. But overall, for this individual, caffeine may negatively affect one of these or all of these things: sleep, anxiety, heart, and bone health. And so because there are variations in all of the genes or some of the genes related to caffeine and caffeine intake, we are going to say that this is a highlight for this person, because that's at the end of the day, the action that's going to be taken. And then in terms of salt sensitivity, we also give that there on the food responsiveness side. On weight management, we now speak about the genetic components or the genetic variants related to obesity risk, so that barrier to weight loss around metabolism, eating behavior, how our genes are metabolizing our carbohydrates and fats and things, but on a more of a genetic obesity and weight loss resistance score. We then speak about sleep impacting weight, and if you are a morning or an evening person, and then your eating behaviors around bitter foods, sweet foods, and then your snacking and satiety behavior as well. And then lastly, but definitely not least, is your exercise response summary. And this is where we're looking at your exercise requirements for weight management, and then also looking at, especially if you need to do a lot of exercise, or if you've got a client who hasn't been doing a lot of exercise and you want to motivate them to keep on a program, it's very useful for them to know, where do they spend some of their time to get better gains? So when they go and do that exercise again or start on an activity, are they doing something really power-based or endurance-based? And are they going to see good gains in that activity? So are they going to improve? And with improvement comes better motivation if they're seeing those changes in their performance, really. We speak about muscle cramping susceptibility. This comes actually from DNA Active, so we've included it here, especially for your sportsmen. Very nice to know. Recovery from exercise, and then all the details around that. What does it mean for this person if they have slow recovery, and then also risk for injury, and this person does have an elevated risk. Then we get in, so that's all of the summary pages. Then starts the technical. So this is where I would almost say this is really nice to speak to your patient about. And then if you wanting to get into the detail, this is where you spend your time on the genetics. And then just as an example here, taking what we saw from that overall caffeine result, and I just want to try and pull it through as an example to explain how we've presented all of these genes and genotype results, because 3 reports means a lot of genes. It also means a lot of interaction between these different areas and reporting on the different areas. And so instead of repeating the genes several times, we've got the gene listed once, and then we show where the impact factors are related to each of these core areas that we are reporting on. So as an example, using caffeine. So caffeine is involved in phase 1 detoxification. It's actually a phase 1 detoxification enzyme. Oh, sorry, this is now linked to the wrong one. Please excuse that. So it's CYP1A2. It's still CYP1A2, phase 1 detoxification. We're looking at the AA. So if you just look just below that, it's the AA. I think my eyes were tired when I put this block in. But if you look at it, then you'll see AA genotype is actually encoding for a fast caffeine metabolizer. In terms of nutrition around, can you take in caffeine for actually in terms of sports performance? Yes, it's fine, it's good, you're not going to see any issues there. But if you then look at COMT AA leads to a slow breakdown of lots of your excitatory hormones, so your dopamine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, so your catechol compounds. That's where COMT is involved. And because COMT is now slow, it's going to break down these excitatory hormones more slowly. When you take in a lot of caffeine, you are pushing up these excitatory hormones. You've got them going now. And now at the end of the day, you think you can take in caffeine because you may respond well to it performance-wise, but actually in terms of having it sit around in your system for so long, you're going to have trouble sleeping that night because your COMT is slow. And so this is what we've taken into account for the scoring, is not just looking at CYP1A2, but actually looking at the other genes that then affect your response to caffeine, and COMT is a really important one in this area. Something else then also to take into account with caffeine intake and health outcomes is your absorption of calcium in the gut is affected by your caffeine intake, depending on your VDR SNPs. So if you carry variations in these vitamin D receptor gene, it leads to an alteration in the function of this receptor. And so caffeine is more likely to interact with the SNP, leading to a decreased availability or a decreased ability to absorb calcium. And so in terms of bone health, your anxiety and your sleep, even though you are a fast caffeine metabolizer, the recommendation is still, the other things that I would still say, don't drink caffeine. And this is a prime example. Like, my husband is a great caffeine metabolizer. He drinks it in the morning and he performs like a bullet. But that night he's still going and he can't switch off, and it's because of the slow count. So even though he's still a fast caffeine metabolizer, the recommendation is cut the caffeine. And that's what we've tried to pull through in these results. So hopefully it makes sense that now, seeing wherever you see a no or a low impact, it is related to, or any of the impacts really, it's related to each of these core areas. If you see it, then there are gene, environment, phenotype interactions around those core areas. If it's blank, then nothing much has come up around those areas. If we then see that you've got a low or no impact, it's not an area that you really need to focus on. And again, just like that functional medicine approach, if you've got a lot of ink in an area, you know that that's an area to focus on. It's going to, if you do one intervention, it's going to change a lot. And so looking at something like VDR, it's coming up quite a bit. So a big focus area would be around vitamin D, metabolism, bone health, and making sure that you are addressing that area. And so that's hopefully how you would be able to sort of ease yourself into these three tables. It is a lot of information, but the gene and genotype results and insights are then also given in the SNP guide, which I'll show you on the next slide. So using that technical information, that's where you can get the insights of where our recommendations come from algorithms that we've put together, understanding what the literature is saying. But then on this one page, and this is a one page that you can highlight, you can tick on based on what the phenotype is of the individual, what their goals are. These are all the recommendations based on, again, highlighting this image at the top, the results for that individual. Where are their weaknesses? What must I now do about it? Now I understand why it affects me in a certain way, why pro-detoxification may be leading to my for gut health, why the methylation is impacting my mental health. Okay, that's very insightful, but now what do I do about it? And this is now where the personalized recommendations come up. So only where there are the weaknesses or where there are specific focus areas highlighted, will you then get the recommendations being provided. Where it is grayed out, it is kind of typical baseline advice, and that's where you as a practitioner come in as well. This is, again, from the genetics and needs to obviously be further personalized based on your other functional tests and who, of course, is sitting in front of you and what their goals and requirements are. And then we go into the detail, the body of the report in terms of each of these insights that we're reporting on, what are the genes that impact that area? So you're actually getting a few further insights around what genes impact hypertriglyceridemia, and that's based on what we see in the research and the genotypes that would impact that. We give you a score, and again, something that is different compared to what DNA health is, where we speak about a low, a moderate, or a high priority. Feedback that we get time and time again from the end user is, what does moderate mean? Do I still need to act on it? It might be quite insightful for the healthcare practitioner, but that's where the genotype results still come in, and you can use that. But from the end consumer, what does moderate mean? Can I leave it, or do I still need to act on it? They want something where they know what to do with that information. And so with this, we've actually taken away that moderate, and we've made the score either a typical or an elevated risk. So it's a dichotomous score now. So it's one or the other. And then outcomes speak about what to do with that information based on your genotype. Again, just an example for homocysteine and methionine regulation, the explanation of what that pathway is all about in layman terms, Again, just showing the typical or the elevated, what genes contribute, and then the outcomes. And so we do that for each of the insights in the report, giving you now the example of caffeine, where we've got this overall insight and then actually the breakdown of where that information comes from. So what genes are we looking at for that insight around caffeine sensitivity? And as I already alluded to, it's your caffeine metabolism, your CYP1A2, it's your COMT, and it's your VDRs. In terms of the weight management, it's all around this behavior and obesity risk score that we speak about, and give insights and recommendations on how to manage those areas. And then on exercise response, a reminder and just more detail on the exercise requirements for weight loss, and then also on power, endurance, recovery, etc., all mentioned in the exercise section. And you'd be able to navigate quite easily from that contents page into this body of and the detail. For those of you who are very comfortable with genetics, my most useful pages, I think, are those summary pages and then the genotype results to get the real technical insights. So from there, if you're wanting more of the technical insights from that genotype results table, this is where we are not including gene and genotype results and recommendations specifically in the report as such. This is then that technical insight is actually left in the SNP guide. And so this is all, and otherwise it would be an overwhelmingly large report. It is already quite a hefty size. So we chose to keep this information in your technical document for you to refer back to. Keep it on your desk and always look at the genes and learn something around one of the SNPs. And then lastly, something that we haven't taken out is just some of the easy fact pages around the diet type that was recommended, how to work out a MET hour, and then where to focus your intensity of the exercise based on whether you're more power, endurance, or what kind of a mix of the two. So DNACore, it's designed to guide you on your journey to live a healthier and more active life, help your patients reach their weight management and health goals by understanding what is going on at that genetic cellular level, from the biological processes, your nutrition requirements, macro and micronutrient, weight management, responsiveness, and exercise response. And so I think that would be a really nice baseline introduction always into this field of genetics and nutritional genomics. And from there, depending on who you're seeing, you can then add on really nicely whichever test would be most relevant for the client, looking at DNA Mind, putting in something around maybe estrogen if it's hormone things coming up, Grow Baby. Lots of wonderful research being done on that, and looking at, if this woman is wanting to fall pregnant, recommending that alongside DNACore, if there are pain management issues, and then of course around autoimmunity, that's your DNA risk, and then your pharmacogenomics, your gene-drug interactions, looking at MedCheck. So that baseline and then building out from there is hopefully an easier approach for this field. And I think from there, understanding that starting there and working with us in the genetics, you would be able to see that there is a test for every step in this healthcare journey, and working with the functional tests and who you're seeing in front of you creates a really nice holistic view and patient management plan at the end of the day. So that is all from me. Thank you for your attention. I think we do have time for questions. And Catherine?
Well, that's a few questions. Thank you very much, Helen, for putting this together. And just as a story is that we have many practitioners who just per default orders health, diet, and sport as one pack for all their patients, sometimes even for women, then they add on the estrogen as well. So there's of course some questions that came up, Helen, but not as much as I but one was around being a fast phase 1, like coffee metabolizer, and then moving into phase 2. But I think you explained it quite well, how the coffee was impacting some of the neurotransmitters, and then that needs to be detoxified or metabolized through phase 2. But yeah, so just to highlight that. So a few questions came up. Well, why haven't you added mind into the DNACore as well? So, but I think it's based on the fact that what's the most popular. I mean, it's going to be a huge report if we add all the reports into one, and it's going to cost money as well. So it's a choice of like, what is the most popular? We've listened to those practitioners who orders many tests, and try to accommodate their questions. And then you can always add on. So what's very important is that you can always add on the other tests in the system. So if you go in and order the DNACore, when you check out, you come to an add-on section. This will actually happen by tomorrow, just FYI. And another thing that's important for those of you who get a little bit hungry to try out this test is that we actually offer a launch price, which is like a 25% discount that will run until the 31st of December this year. So you will get it at a reduced price. If you type in DNACore, it says that there's a reduced price and it's a special price, etc. So it should be quite easy to find the right one. You don't need to enter discount code or anything. The price is there and it will change per the 1st of January 2024. Can't believe we're getting there already. But yeah, that is some of the some of the things that you really need to know if you want to try out this test on yourself or start trying it out on your patients and playing a little bit around on that. I think that was kind of it. But of course, you all have so much experience. You've done the DNA training, all of you. You know the tests quite well. So yeah. Do you want to add anything, Helen?
No, I think thank you for answering some of those, especially the mind one. That was the first question I was asked the first time I presented on it. So thank you for taking it. No, but I think I would just love to hear your feedback on it. And you know, we're always wanting to improve and make something as user-friendly as possible. So feedback on that would be really helpful. The videos in the recordings will keep you updated as to when they will be included. And we're looking at a plan to make sure that they are available in more places than just DNACore, to make sure that this information, it's such useful information. So to be able to utilize it as much as possible. So that is something, watch the space for as well. But thank you so much for your enthusiasm around it.
So just the next, it's not like a full-on DNA training. It's more like a Nordic training in Dubai on the 27th to the 29th of October, where Helen will be educating some of it. And also there will be some of organic acids, and Umar will be there educating as well. But it's not a DNA life certification per se, but it's there will be genetic information there for sure. And also we will do another soon. I'm not sure we have the date yet on histamine and what's the other SNP that we've just
FAT2. So
FAT2 and histamine, we will do a webinar with Helen around where she's gonna help us a little bit looking into that. And those are tests that you can order as single SNPs or as add-ons to DNACore as one example. So thank you. Oh, there are some questions about the discount. Yeah, so the way our system works is that there's always a practitioner price and then there's a patient price. And in those clinics where it's the patient that pays, and the patient price is discounted. And in those clinics where it's the practitioner who pays, and there's a discount on the practitioner price. So it goes, there's a discount until the 31st, no matter how you kind of pay. So yeah, and then of course, where it's a clinical page, you can choose to sell it at the price that you think is reasonable. You don't need to extend the discount to your clients, but that's up to your thinking. So but we are offering a discount because we just really want you to try this out. We know it's like a learning curve. So you kind of, like, some of you can probably wake up in the middle of the night and you can cover a DNA health report the way it is right now. So you kind of like need to get used to this new design. And this is a way of like, supporting you guys a little bit by offering some prices that are a little bit more fun. So the histamine SNP is available already now. So you should be able to see that in the system if you log in, and the FOD2 should be there as well. They're not there right now as add-ons, like, so if you do a DNA health or a DNACore, then it won't come on, but it will be an add-on in like within the next week or so, and especially when we've done the education around those two SNPs. So thank you for today. We will share the presentation in the video. We will share the slides, and we will share a sample report with you as well. So until hopefully just next Thursday, where we are talking about infections, have a lovely time. And hugs to you, Helen, for joining and entertaining us, because this is like and this is better than going to the movies, isn't it?
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
If you do not already have an account with us, please contact our team and we will assist you. If you found this webinar helpful, please like and subscribe to our channel.